Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking some truly fascinating source material and breaking it down to see how our modern world actually works. I mean, just take a look at the phone in your hand right now, or maybe the laptop sitting on your desk. The technology powering our entire lives, it isn't some straightforward, linear march to perfection, not at all. It's actually a brilliant, sometimes brutal, and just utterly fascinating series of engineering compromises. Okay, let's dive right into this, because this quote perfectly captures the whole narrative arc we're about to explore together. We're going to track the evolution of batteries, and as we do, you're going to notice a very distinct pattern. Basically, every major battery chemistry managed to solve the fatal, crippling flaw of the generation that came before it, only to introduce an entirely new limitation of its own. It really is this perpetual, never-ending negotiation.
So, here's a quick look at our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the heavyweight pioneer, move right through toxic toughness and hybrid bridges, explore the massive lithium-ion revolution, see exactly why we are chasing the solid state, and then finish up with the giants of the grid.
All right, let's jump right in and meet our very first character, Section 1, the heavyweight pioneer. Picture this. It's 1859, and a French physicist named Gaston Plante does something completely unprecedented. He basically takes two sheets of lead, rolls them up, drops them into sulfuric acid, and boom, he creates a cell that could actually be recharged. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is the sheer, unbelievable longevity of this tech. I mean, 165 years later, lead acid is still absolutely vital to our modern infrastructure. The electrochemistry is just brutally elegant. When a car engine needs hundreds of amps in a fraction of a second, lead acid just delivers that massive surge current without a single complaint. We literally still rely on it for massive forklift banks and telecom tower backups. When essential infrastructure absolutely cannot afford to gamble on some unproven chemistry, they always go back to the pioneer. And get this, here's a staggering fact for you. In the United States and Europe, lead-acid batteries are recycled at rates approaching 95%. That is incredible. The oldest rechargeable tech out there is actually the most responsibly managed. But it has a tragic flaw. Well, actually scratch that. It has two. The first is its massive weight. You are carrying around an enormous physical penalty for every single joule of energy stored. And the second is sulfation. If a lead-acid battery just sits there discharged for too long, these lead sulfate crystals harden on the plates, and it permanently kills the battery way before its design life is even. Which brings us right into our second era. Section 2, toxic toughness and hybrid bridges. So, about 40 years after lead-acid, a Swedish inventor named Waldemar Junger asked a pretty smart question. What if the plates don't actually have to be lead? In 1899, he invented the nickel-cadmium or NiCad battery. This used an alkaline electrolyte that let it operate way down to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and it delivered this beautifully flat 1.2-volt discharge curve. Now, if you used old electronics, you probably remember the infamous memory effect. Interestingly enough, the sources show this was actually mostly a myth. NASA researchers noticed that if satellites in orbit only partially discharged their NiCad batteries, the cells seemed to remember that shallow point and then drop their voltage. Consumer manuals completely panicked, telling everyone their battery would permanently shrink if they didn't drain it fully every time. The reality? It was mostly just a slight, totally manageable voltage drop. So the memory effect wasn't NiCad's fatal flaw at all. The real fatal flaw was cadmium. You see, cadmium is a highly toxic heavy metal. If it's improperly landfilled, a single cell can contaminate a massive volume of groundwater. Regulators rightly cracked down on this, effectively banning it across the EU by 2006. So to fix this, engineers desperately needed a chemical bridge. They ended up swapping that toxic cadmium negative electrode for a clean hydrogen-absorbing alloy, which created nickel metal hydride, or NiMH. And it was brilliant because it perfectly mimicked that old 1.2-volt profile, acting as this instant drop-in replacement that totally opened the door for a massive wave of new portable electronics.
I love this analogy. Think of this hydrogen-absorbing alloy exactly like a sponge soaking up water. You squeeze the electrons out, and the sponge just absorbs them right back. This exact chemistry is what so reliably powered the first-generation Toyota Prius back in 1997, easily enduring aggressive braking and acceleration for hundreds of thousands of miles. Honestly, its only real flaw was high self-discharge. Basically, if you left it sitting on a shelf, it would go dead in a few months. But then Sanyo's Eneloop brand stepped in, tweaked the chemistry, and fixed that flaw, so a battery could sit in your emergency flashlight for years and still fire right up when you needed it. But as amazing as NiCMASH was, it eventually hit a strict energy density ceiling. So we enter Section 3, the lithium-ion revolution.
Pioneered over decades by brilliant researchers like Whittingham, Goodenough, and Yoshino, this is the chemistry that finally smashed through that density ceiling and quite literally reshaped our modern world. To really understand how it works down at the molecular level, we have to talk about intercalation. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Think of it as a lithium-ion hotel. Instead of permanently transforming the actual electrodes, the lithium ions just shuttle back and forth. When you plug in your phone to charge, the lithium ions check into the graphite anode. When you unplug and use your phone, they check out and move right over to the oxide cathode. The hotel itself never dissolves, it just hosts the guests. That simple reversibility is exactly what gives these batteries such an incredibly long, viable cycle life.
And the impact of this new architecture was immediate, and the cost dropped like a rock. Get this, in 1991, lithium-ion cells cost roughly $3,000 per kilowatt hour. By 2023, that number had plummeted to below $140. That is a massive 95% cost reduction. And each one of these massive drops in cost unlocked the devices you literally use every single day. First laptops, then smartphones, then power tools, drones, and eventually electric vehicles. It was this entirely new global application unlocked purely by sheer scale and relentless engineering refinement.
But there is a dark side here. The fatal flaw of lithium-ion is thermal runaway. If you charge them too fast, it can cause these sharp, needle-like structures called dendrites to actually grow inside the battery. If one of those dendrites punctures the separator, the whole thing shorts out, and that flammable liquid electrolyte inside can just ignite. That is exactly why modern engineering relies on brutal, incredibly strict management. We're talking battery management systems constantly monitoring the voltage limits, porous separators that are designed to literally melt shut to block a short circuit, and liquid cooling plates keeping everything perfectly chilled. It's a highly, highly managed risk.
Now, managing all that flammable liquid is a heavy, heavy engineering burden. Which brings us to Section 4, Chasing the Solid State.
Ambitious newcomers in the industry started asking a pretty blunt question. What if we just remove the flammable liquid entirely? By swapping the liquid out for a solid ceramic or polymer, you physically block those deadly dendrites from ever growing across the cell in the first place. And if you can block the dendrites, you can safely use a pure lithium metal anode. Check out the massive theoretical jump in energy density here. This is exactly why billions of dollars are just pouring into this space right now. Current lithium-ion basically maxes out around 300 watt-hours per kilogram, but solid state with a pure lithium anode, it could theoretically blow right past 500. It is a massive, massive leap.
So the crucial point is this. While the physics of solid state is incredibly real, the chemistry is currently kind of trapped in the laboratory. Why? Well, solid electrolytes really resist ion movement, especially when it's cold out. Plus, as the battery charges and discharges, these microscopic gaps open up between the solid layers. That means you lose contact unless you apply massive physical pressure to the entire battery pack. And honestly, right now, manufacturing these microscopic layers at scale without introducing tiny, catastrophic defects is just an immense challenge for the industry. While solid state is totally focused on shrinking things down, our final chemistry shatters the mold entirely. Let's look at Section 5, Giants of the Grid. You see, in a traditional battery, the energy and the power are jammed together into the exact same physical package. But a flow battery decouples them, using this beautifully simple architecture. The electrochemical reaction happens in a central cell stack, and that is what determines your power output. But the energy itself? That's stored in totally separate tanks of liquid electrolyte that simply pump through the stack. So, if you're running a massive city grid and you suddenly realize you need more energy storage capacity, you don't have to go buy a whole new battery. You literally just bolt on bigger tanks of liquid. The most dominant type out there is the vanadium redox flow battery. And because it uses the exact same element, vanadium, on both sides, any accidental cross-contamination is totally reversible. This allows for an unbelievable 10,000 to 20,000 charge cycles. Plus, there is zero fire risk since it's mostly water. We are talking about a 20-year lifespan for a grid operator. But, as always, there's a fatal flaw. You're dealing with a massive physical footprint because of all those external tanks and the plumbing and the pumps constantly drain a little bit of parasitic power, which lowers your overall round-trip efficiency.
Let's move on and see how this all builds to our grand finale. After exploring 165 years of relentless innovation, all the way from Gaston Plance's rolled-up lead plates to these massive vanadium tanks, it all builds to one huge question. Which chemistry ultimately wins?
And the answer is, no single chemistry wins everywhere. Think about it. If you need cheap, incredibly robust surge power, you're still going to use lead acid. If you need maximum energy tucked right into your pocket, you definitely use lithium-ion. But if you're trying to back up an entire city grid,
you might just use a vanadium flow battery. Every battery ever built, including the one powering the exact screen you are watching this explainer on right now, is a brilliant ongoing compromise of physics. The negotiation literally never ends. So as billions continue to pour into the race for the next big breakthrough, we have to ask ourselves, what incredible, world-changing technology will the next great battery compromise unlock for us tomorrow? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and as always, stay curious.